Good morning, everyone. My name is Smita Murthy. I'm the CEO of Beagle Security. I am very excited and thrilled to kick off this customer interview series with none other than my old friend Rohan Puri from Discern Security. Welcome, Rohan. Really happy to be doing this with you.
Thank you, Smita. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, it's great to see you after all these years.
Yeah, I know. We were just talking about this before we kicked off this webinar about how long ago we had seen each other in person. And I think that was close to 10 years ago
That's
when
right.
Rohan
Yeah,
visited me in Long Island. Now we're on different coasts and we're talking about how we both don't look forward to traveling as much. So, very happy to have you here. For those of you that listened to our prior customer interview, we did that with a customer who has their own software development outfit and how they have benefited from using Beagle Security. Today's conversation is going to be a little different. So Rohan works in cybersecurity. He's a two-time successful entrepreneur. So this is a little different than our previous customer interviews. So I'm super excited to have this conversation. So it's a little different perspective on how it's helping his business. So, a little bit of our shared history. So, Rohan and I worked together when we were at McAfee. I was the product manager, and Rohan was the engineering manager. And I think the first time we met was when you visited India, and we met at that Indian restaurant in UB City in Bangalore, if I'm not
that's
mistaken.
right.
I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
we
that's
bonded
right.
over food.
Yeah,
Continues to be a passion for both of us, along with not wanting to travel. Uh,
yeah, yeah.
so that was fun
Is
times. I think we had
Smita just makes us, let's not go too much into the history. It makes us sound really old, like
hey, listen,
grizzled.
we don't look that old, so we're gonna just pretend that we're still very young.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
with that said, Rohan, let me turn it over to you for you to formally introduce yourself, and then we'll get started.
Sure. Thank you, Smita. So as Smita was talking about, I'm obviously Rohan, and I'm the CTO at Discern Security, and a lifelong cybersecurity professional. Been doing this for like 20 years, and in my journey, worked with a lot of smart people like Smita when AV was just AV and there was nothing else around, and we were building cybersecurity from those days all the way to now. And At Discern, we're taking an interesting approach around configuration management and policy management for security. Um, an interesting stat is that about 90% of the people who buy cybersecurity products do not configure it, and they just sort of leave it installed running on default settings, right? And so they have all these great tools that they've deployed, but they're not utilizing them optimally. So at Discern, we're looking to solve that problem where how we can sort of analyze your security posture and give you tailored and personalized security recommendations based on what your vertical is, what industry you're in, what your requirements and needs are, etc. So we think that security configuration is not one size fits all. So it's a pretty interesting space, and I'm having a lot of fun doing that.
Yeah, it's very exciting to see it. I kind of see a little bit of a parallel to when you worked on EPO while at McAfee, but like, actually using EPO to be configured properly so it can
Yeah.
be used optimally. So very interesting, very excited about this, and we're watching your space too as you guys evolve. So with that, tell me how you found out about Beagle Security.
Yeah, it's as you mentioned, this is my second company, and I'm a big believer in do not reinvent the wheel, and So there are a few things we learned from our first company, and we just immediately sort of bought it into Discern, and Beagle was one of them. It worked so well for us, 4 or 5 years ago, right? When I'm assuming Beagle was relatively young. And we saw a lot of value out of using Beagle at that time for our penetration testing. And as we started up Discern, and I remember, Smita, you and I had this conversation also. We looked around um, the landscape, and essentially, we could go into two directions, right? As a startup, you have a ton of things on your plate, and you just want something done. And one approach to solving that is you just sort of go to these big sort of software houses, these Git-based platforms, and you say, "Hey, do everything for me." And that works to some extent. They will do everything for you, and you'll get a check mark, right? And then you can sort of, oftentimes founders just deprioritize that and they just focus on solving the problem that they're trying to solve. Um, the second time around, we looked at our space. First of all, we looked at the fact that we are in the business of securing other people, so we have to be very secure. And the other thing I really wanted to do was build cybersecurity culture within Discern. And instead of sort of doing this one size fits all, like I said, we are actually building personalized security. We look for a tool that provides sort of tailored, personalized, optimal sort of value for us, right? And Beagle actually hit those check marks for us rather than this one size fits all. A lot of generic tools will give you sort of a report. They'll show you, hey, these are the vulnerabilities, etc. But where I think Beagle stood out for us was explaining what it is and actually giving me practical solutions to address them, rather than just saying, hey, here's a vulnerability and go read this long article and figure it out. Right. So it actually gave me some practical sort of code snippets, etc. Hey, you can do this on your server, etc., etc. So I really like that. And then the interesting thing is a lot of tools, they, when they give you the results of a scan of a test, it's this big convoluted in-depth report that I cannot hand over to my average sort of application developer, right? I need to have like a serious security professional look at it, understand it, see what it means. The great thing about Beagle is that I'm sort of able to permeate this security responsibility through the organization because the reports are easy to understand, easy to digest, and they are not intimidating, right? They talk about the problem, they talk about a solution, and they talk about how, as an application developer, I can go in and fix it. So we actually widely share the reports through the team, and we create issues out of it. And so the developers are looking at it, in their daily sprints, in their daily tickets, rather than having a mindset that security is somebody else's problem. That there's a security person in the team that's going to take care of security, and my job is just to sort of pump out code, right? So creating that mindset in the team is really important for me, and that's where I think a tool like Beagle really shines over the generic scanners that are out there. That was sort of a long-winded answer to your.
And I think you covered three of my questions in that answer. But I really appreciate that. Let me ask you a follow-on question here. Does at Discern Security, do you use the integration capabilities with like the DevOps tools and things like that to track vulnerabilities that are found, and then how to track it so that it's resolved before you release your product? Is that something that you're using at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, right? For us, issues around security stuff that we find using Beagle, and essentially any other tool that we have, we treat security issues at the same level of priority as a feature request, in fact, higher, right? So we use this, we push it out into our ticketing system, and they get assigned just like a regular piece of work would be assigned, and we track it to the finish. So in our daily stand-ups, we have a separate sort of 5 minutes dedicated to talking about our security tickets, which the average developer is doing it. So the integrations are really helping.
That's awesome to hear. So one of the things, so I know you had between Security Advisor and Discern, there was a point in time that you had a different solution in place. We had talked about this without naming names. Is there, and I know you've already talked about the advantages you get with Beagle. Perhaps, is there some shortcoming that was there in the other solution where Beagle actually shines above the other solutions?
Um, I think that so one aspect I covered earlier, which is like the report is easy to understand, and the solutions are sort of practical and easy to understand. The other thing is, the way the console is designed is also it's very intuitive, right? A lot of times, like what I've seen generally is a lot of tools that compete with Beagle are a part of a very large portfolio of tools these large software houses have, right? And so it's a tab somewhere. And it's buried under, like, from our EPO days, like it's buried under like 10 other tabs. And it clearly looks like a lot of this was like, built somewhere else and just plugged into this larger platform, because they're offering you like 10 things, right? They're offering you DAS and SaaS and compliance and, SBOM and everything, right? And so the, um, you know, the value is lost, and the console is not easy to navigate. Like I said, besides having the reports widely disseminated to the team, I encourage the engineers to log in and actually look at the console and look at the reports and look at the vulnerabilities discovered there. I think that is something that Beagle shines out. The other shout out I want to give is to customer support, right? And this really helped us, like in my first company as opposed to the second company, because the first time around, first time entrepreneurs, a lot of things going on, and you're sort of flying the plane and building the wings, and we had like a ton of questions, right, when we got our first report. And and I don't know who does customer support, but they were so helpful, and they sort of walked us through everything. That, hey, these are the high priority vulnerabilities. You got to look at them like this, solve this, then we'll address this, then we'll address this. It was they handheld. And this was 4 or 5 years ago. And even now, like when we reach out to support, it's very personable. Like I said, I really like the attention to detail around that.
So that's thank you for that. In fact, I love the fact that you highlighted that we pride ourselves on our customer support. And if you look at our ratings on G2 or Google peer
Yeah.
insights, you'll see of the 83 odd reviews that are there, a lot of them actually call out exactly what you call out, where a
Oh,
lot of the
that's
customers
interesting.
are
Yeah.
saying that they love our customer support. And the reason our customer support, I believe, having been in the industry as long as I have, why it is better and is definitely more personalized and very intelligent in the support that we're providing is these are folks who are AI engineers, cybersecurity engineers,
Right.
who know the code and are supporting. So they wear multiple hats. And so we have this incredible team that is really passionate about cybersecurity and about the product we've built and about supporting and helping customers. So I think that shines in what they do and in their interactions with customers. So really thank you for saying that. And to all the folks at Beagle who do customer support, this is your sweetest reward.
Yeah.
So,
It's really interesting because I think like I pointed out that security is actually a culture that you want to build in your teams, right? I think something that I picked up from what you just said is having your sort of product developers, your engineers look at customer support and building that pride of ownership also drives like accountability. And, so that's actually a fantastic culture to have in an organization where, you're actually interacting with your own customers rather than like a faceless sort of a customer support organization,
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
again, yeah, that
If
ownership is
you
really important.
Yeah, and if you remember, like for years, a lot of companies have been trying to, build this culture of eating your own dog food. If you created the bug, you better fix it,
Right.
right? But I don't know how successful larger companies have been in doing that because they tend to have a very dedicated support organization and so on. I think our size allows us to be nimble, allows us to be flexible in the kind of culture and the kind of support and quality that we're able to provide. So going back, I know we talked a lot of these we've talked about, but specifically, what are the factors that helped you make the decision to switch from the other solution that you had to Beagle Security? What was beyond the features and everything that we've talked about? Were there other reasons that made you switch?
Well, I think the primary reason is sort of the ROI that we were getting, and it's not just sort of monetary. It's our time, right?
Yeah,
So I think what we realized with Beagle was that sort of every hour that we invested with the tool was worth like 2x, right? As opposed to the other tool. So cost considerations aside, I think, if you are really serious about securing your infrastructure and your application rather than just getting a check mark, you have to, it is sort of, in my book, mandatory to use a tool like this, right? As opposed to, you know, shopping generically. Because it's the expertise that the team brings, the vulnerabilities. So we actually did a test, like we ran two scans, and we discovered what was produced out of our former tool and out of Beagle, right? Besides sort of finding interesting things that were not in the previous tool, um, sort of contextualizing those vulnerabilities was really important for us. So we really like the fact that once you set it up, it's a no-brainer for us.
that is fantastic to hear. Again, rewinding, let's not call it a long time ago, when AV tools used to have bake-offs, right?
Right.
So there isn't a bake-off for AppSec because the lines are blurry in some instances where there are other vendors in the space that have multiple tools all stitched into one platform. Um, so it's great to hear the endorsement from a using customer to say, hey, look, your tool actually found vulnerabilities in an interesting vulnerabilities that the other tool we were using never found.
Yeah.
And if it was important enough, it surfaced it to the top of the list,
Yeah.
to and reflect it in your risk score computation in the report.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a fair point, right? It's really hard to compare tools because the bigger sort of the vendor, the more things they sort of pack into this quote unquote bake off, right? And those things are not what you're looking for actually, right? So you got to dig through a lot of weeds to find what you want, right? Like, so let's say that somebody was interested in API testing, right? But you're looking at tools that are giving you API testing, and they're giving you SaaS tasks, they're giving you SBOM, they're giving you vulnerabilities, everything under the sun. And really, what you're looking for is sort of the market leader in API testing. So it's hard to sort of navigate that space in terms of just doing a vanilla bake off. And I think that's one of the challenges, honestly, in this space, right? So we are from cybersecurity backgrounds that, it's easier for us to sort of contextualize things. Um, but you're standard out of the box. Let's say you're doing an e-commerce startup or something like that, where security is not your forte. It becomes very difficult for those customers to to navigate this, right? So I think the vendors can do a better job highlighting what they're providing, um, separately and then holistically. But right now, because the win is just, hey, here's a SKU that has like, 25 features, just take it.
Yep, yep, yep. Understood. So let me switch gears a little bit and ask you, how has Beagle Security helped your business?
So again, I point to two things. One is, I keep going back to it. It is because it's really important. It has helped me build a security culture, right? The second one is, you know, on a daily basis, I don't have to go and find someone to tell me what's going on with security, right? So it's plugged into my dev pipeline. I see everything coming out. I can look at it every day. My engineers can look at it every day. My co-founders can look at it every day. So that our customers can look at it every day, and it's just taken something off my plate, right? And The other one was really interesting. It's a small thing, but I was kind of saving this nugget for. I thought I'd do this conversation with you, which was, you know, like I said, I was only focused on AppSec, right? And then the other day, one of our customers said, "Hey, this is all good, but do you have like a PCI DSS report?" And I'm like, "Shh, I don't have it." And I was talking to my co-founder. I'm like, "I don't have a PCI DSS report. I mean, you go find a vendor." And we were talking about this in our stand up, and one of the engineers, because they log into that portal, like I said, nobody ever logs into other portals, right? Said, no, we have it. I'm like, what? Which? And sure enough, I didn't know it was there, and we logged in, and Beagle had a section on PCI, GDPR, HIPAA, and I was like, so
Love it.
that that was like a small thing, but that kind of goes back to the earlier point I was making, because the culture is, this is everyone's problem. And we all talk about sort of permeating security into the organization and stuff like that, but these are the kind of tools that really help you do that, right? I mean, you cannot have a sort of an archaic, hard to use tool, push it down people's throats, and then say security is your problem. You have to enable the tools and the tool sets to build that culture.
Yeah. Yeah, that actually brings me to an interesting question I asked even in my previous customer interview, which is, did you know that Beagle Security was built as an AI first tool?
I didn't.
Okay. Do you believe that has so we absolutely believe it's given us an edge over all the competitors we have, big and small, in the market, just because we have a supervised learning system that's emulating what a hacker would do, right?
Yeah.
So we're continuously learning. The more customers that are using it, the more we're learning, and we're able to do our jobs better. So I just want to highlight the fact that we're using AI at the core of everything that we do for the pen testing, vulnerability assessment, and pen testing for web apps, APIs, but also use LLM based technology for our contextual reports so that the insights are actually useful and actionable for our
Yeah, that
customers.
would
And
make
I know
sense.
you
Yeah.
you said you love the report. So
Yeah. So that does help understand how you're driving the context.
yep.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
interesting.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. So and I think we've talked about this, but anything you would like to call out regarding what you love about the product, or what are the opportunities you see for improvements in the future?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'd be interested in now is to learn about sort of how these paradigms apply to AI, right? Like we have our at Discern we have our own models that we're working with. How do we secure that? How do we test that? Data security, infrastructure security around it. Sort of the attack parameters are different. The MITRE framework, has to be changed for AI. So one of the things that I'd be really interested in is how Beagle can help me, sort of get there. Because I don't want to go find something else. I don't even think something exists right now around those things. That's sort of, going out into the future. Other things that I think I can really benefit from having within Beagle is, sort of static analysis of code. I'm just trying to think what other features we use. Our sort of bill of materials, our composition management, vulnerabilities in third-party libraries, things like that, right? So sort of bomb scanning. Again, I'm not advocating that we pack everything in, but these are things that sort of go together, right?
Absolutely.
So it's sort of like short term and long term. I think how do I get confidence around securing my models, my data security around my models, privacy around that, infrastructure security. Those things are something that I think about going forward.
Yeah, totally makes sense. So that's something that, just quite honestly, we try to keep the balance. We don't want to be everything to everyone, which is
Right.
what a lot of the large established players have done in the space.
Yeah.
Right. And when you become everything to everyone, you're not serving the particular constituent that you're trying to serve when you just started. So we're actually, that's interesting you bring that up, Rohan, because we're working on leveraging our core AI, how we can how we can be a little bit more risk aware. Because as you know, one of the biggest things CISOs and CTOs tell us is, hey, this one tool, my SaaS tool found this problem, my SEA tool found this other problem, and then like you're kind of going down the line, and then of course you have your pen test coming from the outside. And if we are finding problems, there's a lot of problems
Right.
inside the house, right?
Yeah.
um my previous interviewer had like a different analogy for that. It's hilarious. He talked about, if there are roaches in the dining room, the kitchen is infested. So
Yeah. Yeah,
but
for sure. Yeah.
so because we come from a third party perspective, so one of the things that we're working on is, how do we, instead of being everything to everyone and building those other things ourselves, we're looking at ways in which we can be a little bit more risk aware, and therefore really really prioritize and bubble up only the things that you need to worry about. So it's no longer, hey, do I have to pay attention to what my SaaS tool is saying, my SEA tool is saying, and my DAS tool is saying, but just like really have that synopsis all the way at the top, a risk score, so that you're really just deploying your limited resources to where you need to pay attention, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's something that we're absolutely actively working on, and I think, just like you, a lot of the CISOs and CTOs we've spoken to, they've said this is a need that they have.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, totally makes sense.
yep. All right. So we're heading towards the end here. What do you see as needs for businesses like yours in DevSecOps and AppSec in general for the future? What are your unmet needs in this
Yeah.
space?
Like I said, like, sort of generically, I think businesses that are our size, startups, young startups, they can do with sort of best of breed tools, right, rather than bundles. So when we talked about building other capabilities, it's a fine line, like you mentioned, we need to walk about sort of being very generalized versus providing all the aspects of security in that risk score that you talked about. Stuff that I think about going forward, like I said, is AI. How do I run security around it? How do I run compliance around it? How do I ensure data privacy around it? Those are things that are completely new paradigms. And I think every organization is either using it or dipping their toes, yet there is no framework around it. So, DevSecOps, AppSec, all the sort of parameters that we know about today around security, how do they apply to the AI world? That is something I think that's coming down the pipe relatively soon for us. So I think companies like ours need to be prepared for that.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. That's really helpful, Rohan, because it's kind of in line with what we're thinking, like directionally where we're headed as a company. So great to hear that. Last but not the least, if you were not here on an interview with us and we were not in the room, what would you tell others out there about Beagle Security?
I'd say that if you want a specialized tool that gives you bang for your buck, and buck is not just money, it's your time and your investment of resources. And if you're really serious about building a cybersecurity culture, then this is the right tool to use.
So great to hear that. And after 10 long years, nice to see you
Yeah, nice to
live.
see you again. Yeah.
So hope to connect with you soon, hopefully either on one of the coasts.
Yep.
With that, I think we come to the end of the conversation. Thank you, Rohan. Thanks again so much for doing this. It's such a great pleasure to have a ex-colleague and now a current customer
Yeah,
on this two-time customer, right?
yes, very
Between the
interesting.
two startups. So continue to, I hope you continue to be happy with the solution. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Smita. Thanks for having me on. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye,
All right,
everyone.
thanks. Bye.